Well done. And a question is this like the 2005 08 market? We've talked about this before. No, it's different. But Scott, what's your sense? How is this not like oh, hey, Dylan, you talked about this earlier. Dylan, how is this not like the 05 08 market?
The big difference is lending standards and the lending environment. So the 05 to 08 market was driven by very loose, easy money that people were using to speculate and buy additional homes, additional rentals. And then it drove, and there wasn't a lot of regulation in the market. So what was happening was realtors were sending unqualified buyers to lenders who were then qualifying them. And then appraisers were then appraising homes above value and putting people who probably couldn't afford it into a home that wasn't valued at what it should have been. And it led to the crisis that we got into. Those things have been fixed in financial regulations. There was a lot of collusion, kickbacks back and forth between lenders, appraisers, and realtors. You can't do that anymore. It's like they can't even buy you lunch anymore. It's like really touchy. So that's the biggest difference is that people who are buying, it's true demand, right? The people who are buying right now, they have 20, 30, 40, 50% down, or they have cash. So they're not coming in with a 0% down loan and no provable income like you could back in the day. And I always use myself as an example in this is I bought my first house in 2004. I was in college in the GI Bill with no income and no job, no real income and no job. My wife, who was not my wife at the time, was teaching for 6 months. We had no savings, no income, very little income, no assets. And we still got a loan to buy a house. So we were like the poster child for the kind of people who were getting qualified to buy homes that shouldn't. We were responsible. We paid our mortgage. We didn't get foreclosed on, but I'm sure there were many people like us who probably shouldn't have been buying at the time. And more recently, the last house I bought, I mean, it was really hard, and we are in a much better financial position now, but it was very stringent, and they double checked everything and made sure that your finances were in place and that, you weren't fudging the numbers on anything. So that's the biggest difference is the lending situation.
So to summarize, the big difference is that back then in 05, 08, they were giving out loans to people that should not have been borrowing that kind of money. And
even today, right? I mean, the three of us could probably speak to this. I have not closed a deal in the last 3 months where somebody didn't have a minimum of 20% down. I mean, you don't even compete. If you come to the table with a 0% down loan or a 2 or 3% down loan, I mean, they're still out there. You can get those loans if you're in the right, situation financially. And they're not bad programs, but they're just so uncompetitive right now because when you go in with 8 offers and 2 of them are cash, if you've got a low down payment loan, there's no way the seller's picking you. So even if the market shifts 10% in the next 12 months, if something crazy happens, something dramatic happens, these people, yes, they'll lose money on the value of their house, but they're not going to be underwater, right? They're still going to have 10% equity in the house because they put 20% down. If they're paying cash, they're not, and the market goes down, yeah, you might lose some of that value, but you're not going to be underwater. There isn't going to be this huge flood of foreclosures because people walked away from their homes because they bought their home for $400 and now it was worth $300, right? So that's a real big difference.
Real big difference, yeah. And this is kind of an important topic because I think a lot of people ask this question. A lot of people ask, are we in a bubble? This is not the first time this has popped up. So I'm glad you went into detail. Heidi, is there anything you want to add to what Dylan said as far as the difference it feels? I mean, have you had any people who have not had a 20 or 30% down, or if not all cash deal? I mean, what would you add to what Dylan said about this question of, are we going into another bubble, a 2005 and 2008? Heidi, you might be muted.
I think Dylan described it beautifully. I do think it's different. I mean, I was just thinking, I have buyers that are putting 20% down and they're getting beat out by full cash offers. So it's definitely a different market for sure than 2005 to 2008. I had an experience recently where a buyer provided a proof of funds in Bitcoin, and the seller ended up canceling on them because they wanted cash funds, and the buyer really didn't want to sell their Bitcoin. And they even created some incentive. I mean, in the offer, there was a $40,000 non-refundable deposit after 10 days if they could just leave their money in Bitcoin. Didn't come to agreement, and they ended up not getting the condo.
Right. This is not a buyer's market. So I'm going to hold on to my Bitcoin to see if it appreciates and blah, blah, that. Like, dude, you're making things too damn complicated. Scott,
One-
anything
one-
you want to add?
oh.
Oh, go ahead, Dylan.
One
Good one.
more stat, important stat, about the housing market supply and demand is that in the lead up to the early 2000s to the lead up to the bubble popping, there was record high numbers of 4 years leading up to 2008. There's record high numbers of new homes being built in America across the country. If you look at national housing numbers, so if you take the 50-year average, right, those 4 years leading up to the bubble, there was record high numbers of new homes being built. In the last 10 years, the number of new homes being built has been well below the national average. So that's further contributed to the supply crisis, is that home builders just haven't been building at the rate they were before. So there was a huge supply of homes leading up to 2008 where people, again, right, were just buying them like crazy because of all this free money. And now there is a real constraint because population has continued to grow, right? I mean, millennials and the next generations have gotten into the home buying age. Baby boomers are living longer, so there's been a huge increase in demand for homes, but we've been building them at a slower pace than we ever have in the last 50 years, and that's further constrained supply. So that's a big fundamental difference in the market also.
Big fundamental difference. Hey, real quick before we get to Scott's point, so Alex commented that Bitcoin dropped 10K, so I don't know how that all went. And Jessica Morris, Islander Ohana member, best joke of the day. Yeah. But did the Bitcoin guy have a stack of wood in his shed? Put it in the offer. I mean, instead of my earnest deposit is a stack of wood in my shed. I know what it's worth. That's hilarious. Scott, is there anything that you want to add to what's been said already about the 05? Oh wait, you've been involved in all kinds of financial transactions. What do how do you respond to that?
Yeah, everybody was making moves and getting money and moving around in that 2005 to 2008 market, to where there were just a ton of transactions. There were way more homes that you knew a new home was going to come on the market, a new opportunity was going to come on the market the next day during that time. And this is the exact opposite. You have to show there's a ton of cash out there and capital that people have access to. The lending restrictions are much tighter, but nobody's moving. So, I've got a client we wrote a $200,000 over asking offer the other day and lost it. And he's like, man, I don't get it, and we're going to have to wait another month for that same type of home that he wants to come up, where in 2005 to 2008, it's totally different. And the home building deficit they anticipate is going to last for about a decade for us to get caught up in that capacity.
Wow.
So I don't see us not having problems here for a while.
That's a strange statement. I don't see us not having problems for a while. So that means you do see us having problems for a while. So it's really, actually, this is maybe for another show, because we can kind of go down a fun rabbit hole here, because there's going to be, we're not going to have an 05-08 bubble, and we're not going to have a bubble in the way we're thinking about a bubble. But I know this, bubbles are always preceded by people saying, oh no, this is not like the last time. I know that. So something,
we got to have more than 1 year of 20% price appreciation. 1 year is not going to do it. You got to have more.